The last live of the year. Yeah, we made it. We made it a long year, and now we're ready to go full steam ahead into the growing season. So I've got a lot of updates, a lot of things to talk about today. And one of the things we're going to talk about and we're going to focus on is purpling of the leaves of petunias, and we're going to kind of discuss kind of why and how that is. And I've got a article from a bunch of greenhouse experts that will explain a little bit more in depth with some science, because I can tell you the basic reason why, but they're going to explain it with science. Yes, science. So we'll just go with that, and it's one of those things that as we kind of discuss it and understand, you'll know a little bit more of kind of the why and the how. But that should kind of answer things. So, yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do today. So I'm gonna kind of meander and chat a little bit about this while we're waiting for folks to realize that I am going to have a live today, and then I'm also gonna probably reshoot a second video on this a little bit later, and we'll just put a more compact, a more succinct explanation of it in the video feed. I know my lives are not the greatest times. You know, Wednesday mornings are kind of hard, but that's what works for my schedule. Maybe we'll do a live again on Saturday. The weather is supposed to be kind of cloudy and rainy here, so that would make it a perfect time for a live. So while we're waiting for a few people to show up, we'll talk a little bit about some of the successes of the things that we've got going, and then we'll get into it. We'll get into our main topic. So the main topic will be purple petunia leaves. Why are the leaves of my petunias turning purple? And I'm not talking purple petunia blossoms. I'm talking the leaves are turning purple. So let's kind of do a little update and look at some of the plants that are going good. This is one that was a cutting that I took several weeks ago, and you can see this one is really kind of taken off. So that is Glamoflage grape. So Glamoflage grape is going good. This is the one that we're going to be using for all our breeding work. So I've got new stock for next year. So that's something. Hey, I see we got some folks joining us. So we're doing a little bit of an update, and then we're going to get into our topic for today. So Glamoflage grape is going to be a part of a lot of my planters next year. I really love the contrast of the white and then the purple blossoms. So we're going to do a lot of work with this and the Firefly petunias. Hey, welcome in. So yeah, that's one of the ones that's going. We do have a few cuttings of the other hybrid. So this is the one where it's got the deeper purple blossoms, and we're going to kind of explain why these blossoms down here went darker than the ones that are originally there. And that is hello. That is one of our topics. So we've got enough folks here. Let's get into the main question of the day, which is, why are the leaves of my petunia plants turning purple? And this is part of the reason right here. Howdy! All right, so here we go. So what I want you to look at is the blossoms of these petunias. The older ones are more white. They're kind of a light pink. Some of the newer ones are a dark purple, and that is one of the clues of what we've got going on with our plants that we need to fix. And we might fix it, we might not. But if you are a Firefly petunia grower or someone that's growing your plants indoors, you're going to start to see a problem that is only a modern problem in petunias, and it's not one that has been around historically. So I'll get this closer. You see how those leaves are purple, right? Now, one of the things I want you to notice about is see that purpling on the leaf? See how it is in between the spaces of the veins of the leaf. So it's interveinal. It's interveinal changes, right? So when we've got something where it's interveinal, we know that that is occurring in the cells that have the chloroplasts themselves. So we know it's right in there in that tissues. It's not in veinal tissue. So this isn't necessarily something that's going to be normal. Anytime you see discoloring that happens here in between those major veins, that is indicating that there's some environmental change that's happening. So there's a couple of things that it could be. One could be a cold temperature response. So we're in the greenhouse, it does have a heater running, and with that, we're keeping the nighttime temperatures above 50 degrees. It's been rather cold here lately. I think the coldest I've seen it get down is about 51 lately. But we are fixing that. So it's not going to be a cold response, right? So that's one of those things. We know we're not getting down to freezing. We know it's not a cold response on this Petunia. And one of the other ways I can kind of point that out is I'm going to bring up a second variety here. So this is Petunia, and this one is pink veined. But you see Petunia, let's get that good leaves right here. See how that's got the purpling, and then the pink vein does not have purpling. So with that, we've got two different varieties. One is showing a environmental response of something's going on. It's telling me something's going on. I'm turning colors, help me. The other variety is like, no, man, we're cool. So there's no purpling on this. So with that, when you've got something that is really variety specific, you know that it's not going to be kind of a general thing. This is going to be something that's going to be specific to the variety or specific to more sensitive varieties. So we're seeing it show up in our Petunia first. And here, let me get that tag out so you guys can see that a little bit closer. Let's see if it'll focus. There you go. So Cascadia's Petunia. So we're seeing it show up in this variety. So we know it's going to be something that's kind of a milder issue or it's new. Okay, so we said not going to be cold response because we know the greenhouse is it's warmer. And I should put an asterisk by the cold response because that's actually it's part of it, but not really, but kind of. Okay, so we're gonna cross off cold response and say it's not cold response. The next two things that we could be looking at is we can be looking at a nutritional issue. Okay, so is this nutritional? When I look at the rest of the leaves they're kind of a light green. They're not as dark as I'd like, but they're not so light in color. They're not like a lime green that I would say, it's nutritional. I've got something going on. There's no yellowing of the leaves, right? The color is still fairly green. I know I'm feeding them a little bit light right now, but it's not nutritional because we're feeding the Jack's Classic, so we know that's not going to be there. Now, are there any other changes? So this is new. Okay, this is a new response. Are there any other changes that are causing anything? So I'm going to look at other plants in the greenhouse, and I'm going to pull something else out and say, am I seeing this in any other plants? This is my verbena starts for next year. And if you look down at the bottom, the stems of these leaves are nice and green, but when you get up here near the top, those stems have turned purple. Okay, so those are two kind of clues. So one, we know there's been a change to the greenhouse. Two, I'm seeing stems are purple. I'm seeing this response in a couple of different Petunia varieties. So I got to kind of figure out what's causing it. So let me give you a little bit of a hint. We're going to turn this way. So those of you that have been watching the channel will realize I added a second layer of lighting. Okay, so I added some shop lights. I had my little grow lights, and we were seeing large interveinal space, or scratch that. We were seeing large internodal spacing. So the distance on our plants in between this node, or where these leaves were, and the top one is getting too large. So I knew we didn't have enough light. So I added extra lights. Okay, that's the only change that's happened in the last few weeks is the extra lights. So when we're looking at our petunias, we're going to assume, kind of Occam's razor. The simplest answer is the correct answer. So in this case, I changed the lighting. I increased the amount of lighting. And when I did that, I used a very specific type of lighting that's causing the issue. Okay? I added LED shop lights. The issue is not that I increased the amount of lights. The issue is that I increased the type of lights. So when I was younger, so back in the 80s and 90s, when we went and we were propagating plants, we used what's called an HPS light, or a high pressure sodium. And high pressure sodiums, if you can think of, if you've ever driven past a greenhouse long ago, or you go into an area with a lot of street lights and it's got that orangey light and like everything has an orange color, those are high pressure sodium. Those are what growers used, you know, through the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. That's what we used for grow lights, was high pressure sodium. So it's lighting that's using the mineral sodium to output a specific frequency of light, or light spectrum. And we use those for our propagation. So all of our cuttings that came in, they were under high pressure sodium lights. The high pressure sodium lights were, hello, welcome in. They were not far from the plants. Our propagation chamber was actually an old meat locker. So when Dad was building the greenhouse, we needed a place. We were originally going to store beef in there, and Dad kind of repurposed it for starting all of our seedlings. So way back in the early 80s, you didn't order in as many as your plugs as you do now. You bought seed. So like the Ball Seed Company, where most people buy their cuttings, that's where we bought our seed, and we started all of our seed ourselves. So we put a single high pressure sodium light in this old wooden, highly insulated meat locker, and then we would turn it on. And we never had to put a heater in there, because the amount of heat coming off of that high pressure sodium actually raised our temperature in our propagation chamber to about 85 degrees. And that was a fairly good sized chamber. I think it was like 8 foot by 10 foot by probably 7 foot tall. So it was a fairly decent size inside. And that one high pressure sodium light put off a lot of heat. So we never saw purple petunia seedlings when I was younger, but I've seen them the last couple of years. And I'm going to link some videos down in the comments, and I'm going to do another kind of more in-depth video on this. But I first noticed it when I started teaching up at the high school a little bit north of here, where I taught for 4 years. And I had incubation chambers that I used. And we weren't using high pressure sodium because it uses a massive amount of electricity. We were using LEDs, right? So when we go through and, so I figured out right away, it was the LED lighting, right? I knew that was going to be it. Found a article in Grower Talks, which is a greenhouse grower magazine. It's one I've read for many, many years. And they talk about purpling, the purpling problem with, I'm trying to read it through the screen and it's backwards. The problem with purple is what it's saying, is it's going through and it's breaking down kind of why we're seeing the purpling of petunia leaves in petunias that are grown under LED lighting. And they're talking about daylight lighting intervals and micromoles per meter squared per second. We'll get into that, and I'll basically read through the article with you and do that when we do the more in-depth video on purpling petunia leaves, because I'm gonna make a compact one and put it in with my petunia care videos. But this is really kind of talking about why the growers are seeing that and what change occurred so that we had purpling of petunias. And they did a series of tests and found out that petunias, yes, grown under high pressure sodium lights, don't exhibit the purpling. When they're grown under LED, they do. And the conclusion that they got is the LEDs are creating a chemical response, right? So this purpling is anthocyanin. Okay, anthocyanin. So anthocyanin is like the suntan lotion of, let's say what it is, a sunblock. It's a sunblock for plants, right? So this purpling here. So anthocyanin. If you wanted to kind of get a better idea of what anthocyanin is, if you've ever had red cabbage, That's what makes red cabbage red, is anthocyanin. Or if you had a bird bath and early in the spring that bird bath got a little algae and it was green, and then when you got to summertime the algae turned red and became angry algae, that algae was developing anthocyanin. So it's a sunblock that plants develop. That's okay. Hey, this if you need to take off, that's fine. This is going to be in the live library, so you can watch it at any time. So it takes about 24 hours for it to process, then it'll be in the live library. So that's cool. Okay, cool. Thanks for joining. So with this, the anthocyanin is that sunblock. It's dealing with the excess amount of specific wavelengths of light that are coming into the plant. But that's not necessarily why we're seeing it with the LEDs. Sorry, live next to an airport. That's not the why. The why is actually dealing with the issue of when we go back, and I talked to you about the incubation chamber that we had for our seedlings. So that very insulated thing where the warmth of that high pressure sodium was heating up the room. So the deal is actually a combination between the light coming off the LEDs and the heat, or the lack of heat. So what they did is they did this experiment, and then they found out that it was tied to not only the lights. No problem. Happy New Year too. And yeah, there will be more help next year, especially once the Firefly Petunias come out. We're going to start a series, and you guys are going to walk through step by step as we go with this. So thanks for joining. So with this, they found out it is the heat that's missing off the LEDs. So the LEDs are basically a cool light. The high pressure sodium is a warm light, and it deals with the temperature in the root zone of the plant. So the plants aren't getting both the light and the heat that you get off of high pressure sodium. The LEDs are producing the light, but not the heat. So, see if I can wiggle this out over here. So the solution to purpling petunias is actually one of these. So this is a heating mat for the roots of the plant. So if you don't want them to purple and you've got seedlings, you can use those LED lights, but you need to put them on top of a heating lamp that's going to heat those roots, or that root zone, up so that the roots get warm in addition to the plant getting light. And that's actually what solves it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get a chunk of styrofoam because I need to insulate this rather well. And we will go through and we're gonna put this heating mat down surrounded by some styrofoam so we can heat up this root ball and see if we can get that anthocyanin, or that purpling of the leaf response, to go away. I don't know if I'll be able to do this right away, but I want to do this, but I'm also planning on getting our seedlings going, and I need my heating mats. So yeah, that's the answer, is it's caused by LED lights and cool roots. So if you warm the roots and you're using LED lights, the purpling will go away. All right, so I hope that answers your question of why some of you are seeing purpling leaves in the petunias. Aphids. Yeah. It's going to be a regiment. Yeah. We're going to be using a regiment of how to treat those aphids. So I'm going to start everybody on a cycle. Found out with this one that it's sold in some places without the systemic, what goes into the plant. So we'll have to kind of talk about that and find some other options. But yeah, so we'll get into that on how to solve that. So look forward to the full-length video where I really go in depth with this. But yeah, that's what it is lack of heat with LEDs is causing what looks like a nutritional deficiency. Okay, so I hope that answers that question. So let's get into a couple other things today. So, yes, going forward this year, I have reached out to Light Bio about the Firefly Petunias. And I was told, wait, there's not any information coming out of Light Bio right now as far as our bioluminescent Firefly Petunias. It seems that they're waiting as long as they can to do a big splash about what's coming. Now, as a nurseryman, so this is not coming from Light Bio. As a nurseryman, I know the websites I can go to find out more information about the availability of certain cuttings, right? So with where I've done, usually for me in August of the year, I'm looking at what seedlings, what cuttings, what plants I want to grow for the next year. So I do that in August. So in August, all of the distributors get together and they create a list and said, these are the new plants for next year. This is what's coming. And they give you a list and you can select from those and say, I'm going to order, 402 cell trays of, we'll use this as an example, of Petunia. And they go, great, you've got an order for 402 cell Petunias, right? So they know how many cuttings they need to produce for that particular time. And I tell them what, week I want it delivered. I want it delivered in the second week. So I went into one of those systems and I looked for Firefly Petunias. There's only one type available, and it's white. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but unless they are hiding that or coming from one particular grower, the general cuttings that are available to all growers right now are white. Sorry. But that is one of the distributors that I could get into that openly posts that online. So me grabbing this, it's not coming from Light Bio, it's coming from my sources to be able to answer that question. And because this website is public and it doesn't require a registration to go in and look in that, I consider that public information. Okay, so that is what I've been told. Now, that strain of white, thanks for the sub. That strain of white, I don't know if this is the brighter strain of white. Okay, so it doesn't tell me improved, 6 times brighter, 10 times brighter. It doesn't say that. All of that information about the brighter varieties coming are from my earlier discussions with one of their growers. And that was mentioned in their podcast, which is also public. Okay, so I'm only grabbing public information. I'm not sharing anything behind the scenes. I'm just some guy that's a greenhouse grower and an educator, but I do a lot of research and I ask a lot of questions. Unfortunately, Light Bio is not forthcoming in a lot of the questions we would love answered. So that means that most likely the variety that's going to be available to us is going to be white this next year. Now, as far as other plants, we know that they have a Nicotiana, so a flowering tobacco. We know they have one of those that glows. That's the original plant they use. They do have the patent on a glowing tobacco. So a Nicotiana is what we use. We use a scientific name because no one wants to put tobacco in their yard. And if you call it Nicotiana, regulatory groups are saying, well, Nicotiana is the flowering version. It's decorative, even though it's also going to have nicotine in it. So we know they have a Nicotiana. We know they have the Petunia. They have I think it's a type of bittercress. It's basically a plant that most genetic companies use when they're doing genetic research because the life cycle is really, really quick. It's like 3 to 4 weeks and it'll turn over, so you can do a lot of generations really quick. They also have a poplar tree. That's the cool one. They have a patent for a glowing tree. So that's some of the patents that they have. And then I think I'm missing one. I don't remember which one it is, but I think they have it for 5 different plants. The chrysanthemum, the mum. The mum is most likely, if you look at the patent and all the information, that's probably most likely where we're going to find it. So I think that's going to be what's new, but we won't know until they release it. Okay, and I was told to wait. The other question I've had a couple of times is, am I going to become a Light Bio partner? I don't have enough greenhouse space, unfortunately. I would love to be their social media partner because if you go through YouTube, I think I'm the last person that is doing a lot of research and work with the Firefly Petunias still. You know, there's a big splash on year 1, bigger splash on year 2. I'm the only one that's kept up. Most people have like 2, maybe 3 videos. A lot of people just have 1 video on them, and I'm still going. So I would love to be their social media person on that. So yeah, I wish I had better news, but as far as my sources, that's what I could find. Now, I know there's been a drive for this. You know, a lot of people do want a variegated bioluminescent petunia. A couple of problems with that. One is that amount of green in there, a lot of the Firefly Petunias, you know, their intensity and amount of energy that they can develop through photosynthesis dictates a lot of how they glow. So I don't know if they've reached out to the Glamoflage company to get the variegated one, but you know, we're doing that through traditional breeding, which is going to start, I'm going to start planting those seeds come January. So there's going to be a lot to follow there. So I don't know if there's a variegated variety, but the only way for me to get more information would be to register with some of the distributors. And in a way, I feel that would be unfair to register with a distributor in order to get information that is, in a way, kind of not public. So it's public, but not public. So there are distributors that I've worked with before that I've purchased a lot of plant material from, but I think going into behind their, it's not really a paywall, but it's their registered user wall and grabbing that information, I don't feel that that's really fair. But if it's a website that's available that anybody can search, yeah. Hey, welcome in. So yeah, as far as I can tell, it's just white for next year. Now that could very well change. You know, the first year our Firefly Petunias were released, there were 2 growers. Okay, Moss greenhouses and Rakers. Those were the 2 greenhouses that produced Firefly Petunias. I don't know if they're holding something back, but I've been told to wait. We'll find out soon. Okay. All right, let's go to questions. The main problem I find besides the aphid issue is the firefly is so delicate that the roots are as fine as hair and it can't survive any sort of distress. When it comes to petunias or any plant in general, when we do a lot of changes to it, and I'm going to say changes in general because some of it's going to be through plant breeding and some of it's going to be through gene editing, which is what they did in this case. You do get plants that are a little bit more sensitive. So let's kick it way back to something some of you may not know exists. An Inca marigold is the marigold with the big fluffy frilly blossoms. They're like that big around. Okay. Back in the 90s, I think it was Ball Seed put out a bounty for growers all across the United States. It says, hey, marigolds come in orange and brown and yellow. Orange, brown, and yellow. That's it. We want a white one. And I don't remember if the bounty was $50,000 or $100,000, but they put a bounty out on white marigolds. So it's a color that doesn't naturally occur in the marigold. Lo and behold, a couple years later, they had white marigolds. So one of the growers out there had a sport that was white and they bred it. That white marigold, though it was really, really cool and it looked great, it was very, very sensitive to environmental changes. So with those, the white ones tended to get botrytis fungus in the blossom quicker than the yellow or the orange did. So they were more sensitive. So anything that we're breeding or doing a lot of work on is always going to be more sensitive. Now, let's see if I can do this without hurting it. And I know there's a dangling branch. I'm trying to take a cutting of this one, but I don't want it to be done yet. So this is, let's see if we can get him turned over. Oh, he's not been watered lately. All right, so that's a hybrid. Okay, that is a Firefly Petunia hybrid. So this one, you can see those roots. Those are really super healthy. Okay, get him back in there. That's one of the things that we can do to make our fireflies better, is bring in some other genetics and try to bring in traits that we want. So that is the amazing thing is the parent of that was a trailing Petunia, and yet it's more upright. So it's resorting back to older genetics. So if we can bring in some of that stuff through traditional breeding, and yeah, that Petunia that I showed is the hybrid that does glow. And the blossoms under the LED lights are developing more anthocyanin, so they're getting darker. Yeah, it's literally the only hybrid that I created that I kept. I like it. I like it a lot. So yeah, that one, it doesn't branch very readily, but I've got a couple of cuttings over here that I've started, and that's going to be something I'm going to be working with. The stems glow fairly bright on that, but the thing I loved was the vigor and the fact that the roots are absolutely phenomenal on there. So with the Firefly Petunias, going back to the question about the delicateness, that's part of where we're going to go with the channel this next spring, is we're going to start at ground zero. Let me grab a start. Let's grab this one. So I'm going to start everybody at where they begin, which is we're going to start right here on this size. Now I'm keeping over some of my stock from last year. Very, very, very few. I have to clear out a lot of stuff. In fact, behind me outside is the pile of shame of all of my hybrids and my extra stock. Even my big mother plant, she's gone. Those are all gone, and we're starting over fresh. No, hybrids are more prone to silencing. They turn off rather easily. And the silencing issue is one that if you solved that, you're talking like Nobel area, because gene silencing is over everything that's genetically engineered. So the chance of Light Bio figuring that out, no, that's the modern plague of bioengineering, is gene silencing. So I don't think they'll figure it out. And a lot of the silencing is kind of environmental. So when the plant is stressed, so if it gets too dry, if it gets attacked by aphids, if somebody sneezes by it, it can trigger it. Some of them, it just goes on its own. The mother plant that I had, the original big mother plant, there was one branch when I originally got it that was silenced. So even my big beautiful one had a silenced portion, and of course I removed it so it wasn't a part of the canopy of the plant. But yeah, I don't think they'll figure it out. So where we're going to go is we're going to start at square one, right? So I'm going to spend a bunch of money, even though I don't have to. I'm going to start over where everybody else starts. No, Light Bio doesn't give me stuff for free. I have to buy it like everybody else. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to buy them in a couple different locations. Home Depot is like the major place I can buy stuff here. Home Depot last year sold a 3-plug set. We're going to start over with a 3-plug set. And I'm going to walk you through every step of the way. So we're going to be doing weekly or even bi-weekly. It just depends on the season and what's going on. But at least weekly videos of this is what's going on in our Firefly Petunias now. This is what you need to be doing. Okay? So some of you are going to get your Firefly Petunias before I do. So I am in zone 6A. So I am further north. I get a lot colder. If you're in zone 8 or zone 9, okay, the bigger the number, the warmer the temperature. The smaller the number, the colder the temperature. If you're in those other zones, Light Bio will ship to you first because they want to make sure the plants arrive. But what we're going to do is we're going to start, and I'm going to tell everybody when I'm ordering. So you can, if you want to follow the track, you can order at the same time. And I'm going to walk you through every step of the process of growing the Firefly Petunias. So we're gonna unbox them together. So they're gonna come in. Now, if you get yours before me, please unbox it. Don't leave it in the dark. But I'm gonna unbox it. We're gonna acclimatize it. So they come in those plastic clamshells. depending on the time of year you get it, there's some special care of how you open them. Basically, you bring the box inside, you let it cool down for an hour or two, then you start slowly opening things up, because some of these cuttings came so dry that when people brought them in and opened them up, just it turned from lettuce to parsley. So we're going to walk through that process, and then we're going to talk about all of the materials. So I'm going to talk about pots, right? This is a blow mold 4-inch pot, square, perfect amount of soil. We'll talk about the soil that we're going to use. We're going to talk about planting, all of the transplanting, so you can follow the entire step as we go through. Okay. And when it's time to transplant, we'll talk about when it's time. What does the canopy of the plant look like to when we're supposed to transplant it? Like this one. Does anybody know what needs to be done to this plant pretty much this week? I'll give you a moment. There's something that needs to be done. Let's see if y'all know what needs to be done right now. I'll wait for you guys to answer, and we'll talk about that. So I'll show you when they need to be transplanted up, right? So we're going to go up to the next size. So we're going to go from, our plugs that arrive, so it'll be the tiny plugs, to the pots. From the square pots to the gallons, from the gallons to the bigger pot. Yes, it does need to be trimmed. So we do need to pinch our apical meristem up here, okay? So this one started to bloom. We don't need it to bloom, but this bud up here, if we don't trim that, it's going to be this long gangly thing. But if we trim that, I don't want to, I need the cutting, so I trim it now. I almost cut it, but I need the cutting. So I'm not going to do that quite yet. But yeah, we'll trim this off here, and that's going to activate those other nodes down here to produce a branch. So we'll get other little branches like this one here, and it's going to get you a fuller plant. Okay, so I'm going to step you all the way through the way. Now, when you read LightBio's website, it says that the average plant size is 12 inches. I'm going to show you how to get them 3 feet across. Okay, so that's what I want you to join me for, is I want to show everybody out there that we can take a petunia like this and we can make it ginormous, right? So if you look at my old photos, and I wish I could drop a photo in this, but when my phone died several weeks back, it took all of my photos of my stuff. That I should have uploaded to the cloud. I didn't. But you can easily get one of these to 3 foot across. So, oh, you can't even see it. Yeah. Like that far across if it was laying down, right? See that video? Maybe I'll drop it down in the links too, of how big can a firefly petunia get, and it's limited to the container size. Now there's an upper limit of this, right? So we don't go more than 12 inches by 12 inches because, as was mentioned earlier, the roots are fairly fine, right? So it doesn't benefit from anything larger than a 12-inch by 12-inch round pot. But with a 12-inch by 12-inch, it'll easily cascade down over the side of that pot and cover it up. So those of you that saw my mother plant that was in the corner, it's in a 12 by 12-inch pot, and she covered the pot completely. You couldn't see the pot down below, but that's what it was. Those of you wondering, well, where am I going to get a 12-inch by 12-inch pot? Did you buy mums from Costco? If you bought mums from Costco this year, you have a 12-inch by 12-inch pot. In fact, the pots that I grow that are 12 by 12 inch come from my mums that we purchase from Costco, right? So the pots are empty because I plant those mums in the ground, and then I have that pot. It's a perfect size for the maximum size of firefly petunia. Okay? So yeah, and that's the point. This channel, we are going to live and breathe firefly petunias this next year. And I want to make sure that everybody's having success, right? So we're going to start with the stages. And then the other question that came up, let me put this back so I make sure I get it in the right spot. What's called, it's something called IPM, or Integrated Pest Management. So we're going to go through and we're going to do a regimen of sprays. I know some of you don't like that, but if you've grown firefly petunias for a year, you know your biggest enemy out there is aphids and budworm. So we're going to go through and we're going to do a regimen, and we're going to do preventative applications of insecticides. Okay, the caterpillar one, don't worry, that caterpillar one is a biological. For the aphids, we are going to have to use a chemical one on them. I grow a lot of petunias. The only petunias I have ever grown that will die from an aphid infestation are firefly petunias. And by the time you notice they're there, it's generally too late. Okay? So we're gonna do applications, and we're gonna do them in a rotation. So we're gonna start off with one chemical. We'll use that for one application. We're gonna go to another, and then we're gonna go to a third, and then we can come back to our first one. So we're gonna try to manage the resistance that those aphids develop. Okay, let me see if I can find something else. Aha, there it is. Now, if you were overwintering firefly petunias, and you've got your stock from last year and you had budworm, you may have a Trojan horse living in your pot. Okay? See that right there? It's kind of out of focus. That's a chrysalis. Okay? So this, see if I can put this down here so you can see it. I'm going to tilt this down. See if I can get it to stop moving. That's alive. That is a budworm chrysalis. So I have kept that over for a moment like this, but more to shoot a video on it. So I have budworm that are still living in my greenhouse. Now, I have cut down the number of pots that are held over. So there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3. So there are only 3 pots held over that I could have budworm in, and I found that right on the soil surface. Okay, that was when I was clearing out some of the stuff I was discarding. So yeah, you can overwinter budworm in your growing area, and then as soon as they get the right signal to hatch, they will hatch. And I can tell you, this one is progressing. Pretty sure that's budworm. I don't know. We're gonna watch it hatch and we'll find out. But yeah, I've had budworm chrysalises over winter in my containers and then hatch, and I'm getting budworm damage in February. Excuse me, I forgot to bring my cup of coffee out here. But yeah, budworm damage in February shouldn't be a thing, because in North Idaho, we should be sub 20 in February. Last year when I was growing for the high school, I think in February we were like between 5 and 19 degrees. So there shouldn't be any budworm flying around. So those were in my stock plants. They were in my breeding material I had, and they hatched and then flew around the greenhouse laying budworm eggs. Okay, so if you have your overwintering fireflies, search the surface of the soil and see if you've got one of those chrysalises sitting there and remove it. Okay, so we will be doing applications of BT, or Bacillus thuringiensis, the budworm chemical. We'll do that fairly early, just in case some of us overwintered those. Okay, so we're going to talk about containers. We're going to talk about integrated pest management. Okay, so those insecticides or those biologicals that we're going to use. The next thing that we're going to cover is nutrition. A lot of people out there are not feeding their firefly petunias as heavy as they needed to, and they're getting a lot of that interveinal chlorosis. Okay, so that changing of leaf. I don't know if you can see it real well, but this one has interveinal chlorosis. One of the problems of having a tiny greenhouse is humidity. So I can't do a lot of watering, and watering is how I apply my fertilizer. So some of my plants are kind of struggling with that. They would prefer to have more fertilizer than what they're getting now. So heating the greenhouse to drive off that moisture, I'd also have to vent it, and it's not really an option when it's 25 degrees out there. Jax, yes. Jax Classic is what we're going to use. I'm hoping that we're going to see something else come on the market soon that is specifically for Firefly Petunias. So being a part of the Firefly Petunia community, there are a lot of people that are working on their own fertilizer formulations, and I'm hoping Jax comes up with one and has it available, because they do it for all sorts of things. You know, you can buy Jax African violet fertilizer. You can buy Jax houseplant fertilizer. They specialize it in all sorts of stuff, and they do custom mixes. How do I know that for sure? My father used to be the West Coast sales representative for J.R. Peters, which is now the Peters Fertilizer Company. Long ago, Jax was known as Peters, sold to Scotts. Long story. Anyway, he worked for the company for many years. Went all the way from Alaska down into Mexico selling fertilizer. So yeah, they do custom blends. And the other thing is because he was a salesman and we had a nursery, we were quite unique in the realm of retail. So to kind of give you an idea how much we sold of that fertilizer just directly from our nursery, I'll get to that in a second. So most retail locations would sell a case of fertilizer in a season, maybe two. And according to my dad, he's like, yeah, you know, if you had a store that was selling 2 cases a year, that was a big deal. That wasn't so with our nursery. So we actually bought it in and sold it to our customers for our hanging baskets, which is why I'm such a huge Jax advocate. We were like a total anomaly. So we sold more fertilizer through our small retail outlet that was only open 2 months out of the year than most chain stores, like all of the stores in the chain, sold in a season. We would sell a full pallet of the Jax fertilizer. Because basically, if you bought baskets with us, we highly encouraged you to have the right fertilizer. And in our opinion, that was the best fertilizer. And we sold it pretty much at cost. We didn't make much more than $1 or $2 off of each container because we had to stay competitive. But even if I forgot to sell fertilizer to the customer that was buying the hanging baskets, if there was one of our returning customers, they would say, you can't buy those baskets unless you buy this fertilizer. And they would literally go over to the shelf, grab a bucket of fertilizer, put it on the counter and say, you have to buy this with your plants. That wasn't me. That was our customers doing that. So I am really hoping that Jax does that, or Peters does that. I'm having great luck with Fox Farms soil. Am I on the right track there? If it's a peat perlite mix, you're good, right? We want to make sure we have a good peat perlite mix. We don't want bark. We don't want mulch. We don't want composted plant material. We want to have virgin material, so first use material. We want peat moss. We want perlite. Perfect soil, right? So that's gonna work there. Okay, so we got container, we got integrated pest management, we got fertilizer. The other thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about location. So where you grow the plant matters. And that's going to really depend on where you're located. So I am probably in the upper end of where Firefly Petunias are going to grow well outside. But if you think of like Arizona, you're kind of along the same track of my growing conditions. So I'm in North Idaho. Reaching 105 degrees in the summer is average for us. So once we get to, mid-June, we're going to be in the hundreds. We get into July, early August, 107, 111, 113, 118. That's not unheard of for us. So it depends on where in Colorado. But for me, I kind of compare I live in a high desert, but it's not really high in elevation. I think we're 740 feet here. So I'm in the lowest part of Idaho, So we stay the warmest in the winter, but we get the hottest in the summer. Metro areas will always get hotter. That's the heat sink effect. So the asphalt in the buildings holding that heat. I'm in a rural metro area, so that's not as much of where my heat comes from. My heat comes from elevation and just the intensity of the sun. Uh, I'm right by Hell's Gate, so literally and figuratively. So Hell's Gate State Park is not far that way. Yeah, upper 90, and it's going to depend on your humidity. I get really low humidity, but I'm very very warm in the summer. And I grow my petunias in part sun, so they are in the sun from basically probably 7:30 in the summertime, because I can't see the sunrise. I'm actually on the backside of a hill, but as soon as they come up, all the way up into about noon, 1 o'clock, they're in full sun, and then from 1 o'clock on, they're in the shade, and they do really really well in there. But again, we're gonna grow. Well, it's just hard to keep them in full hot sun when you're 100 and 115 degrees. But what we're going to do as a part of this is I'm going to grow them in 3 different areas. So we're going to grow them in shade, we're going to grow them in part sun, and we're going to grow them in full sun. So I'm going to do all of those locations, right? So you will get to see that opportunity of how they perform in each location. The hybrids are probably going to be in absolute full sun because I'm expecting to have a lot of hybrids. Like, I'm going to be building greenhouse benches outside of my greenhouse, and I'm going to be growing all of my hybrids on the benches. I haven't told Mrs. Ag Teacher Thoughts that yet, so surprise. So I'm going to build some benches that are probably 3 foot wide and 8 foot long, covered in wire mesh, and it'll be pot to pot with these 4-inch plants. And I'm probably going to have to hook in a sprinkler system to keep them watered when we get to end of summer. But by then, I'll probably have filtered through and selected the petunias I want to keep. So yeah, that's the next thing that's coming, is I'm going to have to select. I'm going to have to start growing the seed, and we'll start selecting out of the seed what has the brightest glow. And if it's not glowing, it's just going to get discarded, because I've got thousands of seed to go through, probably 3,000 to 4,000 seeds, and I'm not going to grow 4,000 plants here that I can't sell, because that's a lot of potting mix. I think I can get about 220 to 240 pots of soil out of a bag. Maybe it's less than that. I don't know. I have to go back and look at my calculations from when I was doing that for the school. I may be off. It may be 100 and some pots out of a bag, but I'm not going to buy that much. Oh, hydroponics up. Yeah, the transition's always going to be a mess. Trying to think of the best way to do that. You're going to have to do a high moisture retention in that if you're doing that. I would shy away from doing hydroponics on the fireflies, just because they're so sensitive, and you've got to really manage your pH and the amount of contact that they have with your the fluid. If I don't know, is it straight immersion, or are you doing misting, or are you doing bubbling? No, as far as the hydroponics, is there air aerating through the water, or is it misting on them, or is it just straight floating in the water? There's like 4 types of hydroponics. There's a deep hydroponic where they're just like on a raft floating in the water. Straight arrow garden. I don't know. Is that spray, or is it just they're floating in the water? Floating. Okay, so it's a deep hydroponics. There's other ways that you can do it that might be a little bit easier, but it's going to require some fabrication and MacGyvering. One, to make giving a little more oxygen to the seedlings, is you can take like an aquarium pump. Got one down here. Oh, but it's under stuff. Like one of these aerator aquarium pumps. And you put, oh, it's got all wet. That's pond water. Blah. But you put an air stone in there and an aquarium pump, and you run air in there. And that gives more oxygen. Oh, it has an aero pump. Okay, good. Pond water. Yuck. Okay. Yeah, it's got to have some sort of air. Some of them, we got pond water everywhere. Some of them actually use a misting system, so the roots are just dangling, and it just sprays the roots like every 5 minutes. But you do need to have the oxygen for those. Kind of transitioning them over slowly is going to be kind of difficult. Anytime you're going from hydroponics into pots, it's going to be difficult. Just because as the soil comes in, all the roots are like in one plane. So you would have to kind of like spread them out and then add peat moss as you go. But then you've got to kind of keep the moisture content of the peat moss up. It's just hard. It's really easy to damage roots, especially the fine ones of the firefly petunias. Now, if it was like my hybrid where they're really thick roots, it'd probably transfer really, really easy. All right. I don't really know what... I think I'm going to wrap this just with one more update, and then we'll wrap it for the day. I got Christmas to go take down, all my big fancy Christmas decorations, which you'd see on the Ag Teacher Christmas channel, which is kind of winding down for the year. It's my 2-month-a-year channel. But last big update. So, the greenhouse radiant heater that I was fabricating, not going to work. Could I get it to work? Yes. Could I get it to work without spending another couple $100? No. Part of the problem I ran into is I need a custom burner, which I would probably get out of a regular heater, because in order to put a safety mechanism into my system, I need a thermocouple, and thermocouples are low pressure. The propane torch I was using is high pressure, and there's not a way to transfer those, so I need a high pressure thermocouple. I don't have the money for that. So that system is going away, but there is a system I found on Home Depot after doing one last futile Google search for a vented heater. I found one that is for tiny homes or for motorhomes. So it is a direct vented propane heater that's designed to go in a wall, and it will heat up to 800 square feet, which is perfect because we don't have 800 square feet here. So it's a little over $300 for that, and it should arrive sometime next week. And I'm going to put that in, and then once we get in that in here and we get the temperature up where I'm happy, and I'm not running the little electric heater down here that constantly pops the circuit and makes me worry in the middle of the night. Once that propane heater is up and running, and it doesn't take electricity, so it creates what it needs. That means we'll be able to go full on to seeding. So we'll start seeding our Firefly Petunia hybrids, and we'll go from there. So that's the next one. Is I figured out the problem with the greenhouse temperature. So that's gonna go there. And then if we do get that massive tax refund that everybody talks about maybe coming next year, if it's that big one, we're going to fully build a brand new greenhouse. And we're going to do an aluminum frame greenhouse up where I've got a storage shed right now and a big pad. And that'll come down, and I think I've got, I think it's 8 by 12. So it'll be pretty much twice the size of this one, maybe a little bit more. And we'll build a full one up there, and it's going to have heat and electricity and all of that, and it's going to be a beautiful greenhouse. At least it is in my mind. I'm not doing a kit. I'm gonna build it. I'm gonna build it myself, and it's going to be on the channel. So there'll be another greenhouse build. But yeah, that's dependent on whether or not that massive tax rebate that's been rumored comes through. Because if it does, I'll be able to afford the very expensive aluminum and. Actually, I think the Lexan coating material is more expensive than anything. It's like almost $200 a sheet. So, but yeah, that'll be our big update. Is we have a new heater coming, and I'll do some install videos. But yeah, I really wanted the radiant heater to work. I'm still going to work on that, but do it as more bench testing as proof of concept, to prove that I can do it. It's just one of the hazards of being a high school teacher for many years is I taught through COVID, and I got COVID. And the problem with getting COVID is you lose a sense of smell. And one of the things I lost was actually propane. So I can be in a room full of propane and I will not know it. So that kind of hit home why I stepped away from the idea of a heater when my wife bought me a gas detector. And she's like, "You're going to blow yourself up." Yeah, I had COVID over and over. You imagine what it's like working with teenagers and junior hires that don't wash their hands. Yeah, I got it a lot. I have lost all sorts of flavors and scents. Some good, some bad. I couldn't smell the junior hires when they came back from PE. That was a good thing. But also not being able to smell propane and you're a greenhouse grower is a bad thing. So, but yeah, so because she had those concerns and I saw her buying equipment, I realized how stressed she was over that. And I was like, okay, I yield. I will try to quit cutting corners and I'll just go out and find it. And yeah, I finally found one that was reasonably affordable. And that one will heat this greenhouse. And then when the big greenhouse, when the larger greenhouse is built, that heater will go up there too. Okay. So anyway. All right, well, it's been an hour, which is what I usually allot for the lives, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up now. And then I got to transition into picking up all of the Christmas lights, the thousands and thousands of Christmas lights, and several hundred yards of extension cords. So that's where I'm headed to next. So anyway, I thank you all for joining me. I hope you learned something about purpling of leaves in petunias, and I hope you enjoyed. As always, Ag Teacher Thoughts out. Thanks for joining, y'all.